Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to teach Zettelkasten, I guess. So here we go again with another episode. Tonight's episode is about placing a main card into your Zettelkasten and some guidelines for doing that. And I have an example card, a real life card that I'm placing in my system that just had so many interesting wrinkles and insights that I thought sometimes just one example can turn out to be more instructive than 10 paragraphs of rules. So let's take a look over there and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, last night I mentioned that I, for the first time in my life, made a bib card for a book I did not yet have. It's a book on speed reading that I ordered, and I decided to make the bib card the day I ordered the book because I wanted to track why I was ordering it. I wanted that purpose down there because I tend to buy books faster than I read them, and then they sit on my shelf, and then when I pull them back up again, it's like, why did I buy that book? So this one I know for sure why I bought it. It's because I have to get to all those books I've got on my shelf. So today I did something that was also a first for me. I made a main card from a review of the book that I don't yet have. So I've never made a main card off of a review, and I've never made a main card from a book I've never read. So this is kind of an interesting one, but in making that decision to purchase the book, I was very impressed by the reviews that claimed that this is not scanning a book, that you're actually going to fully comprehend and retain what you read, and what it's going to do is it's going to totally shock you, the ability that your brain and eyes have working together to make this happen. That basically the eye and the brain are practically one organ. And so I thought that was rather interesting concept. And so my comment back on this for my part in the main card is that this is a gamble for me. And I am a slow reader. I am a seriously slow reader, but I read deeply and I understand deeply. So I'm asking myself, is it going to be possible for me to get much out of a book if I try to speed read it? So this is a big experiment. And so this is the card that logged that experiment. So then, having done the pieces that I need to do, what I got from the review, my part that I added, where it came from, and a tagline that will bring the whole card back to me. Then the question was, well, where in my Zettelkasten did I want to file it? I came up with some candidates, and I've recently taken the practice that I'm going to share right now. I would usually grab a scrap piece of paper and write down candidate places where I might put this card. Well, do you notice what I did with it this time? I flipped over the main card and put the candidate locations on the back. It was convenient and handy, but I thought at some point it might be interesting to know what were some of the other places that I thought about putting this card. So because I have something on the back, I need to indicate that on the front of the card. So this is another tidbit. I always indicate that there's something on the back of the card by putting an asterisk on the front of the card. And most cards do not have anything on the back, so when I see that asterisk, that tells me, there's something on the back. So I pulled a number of cards to take a look at which places it might go, and I ended up with two really, really good choices. So much so that I knew I needed to make a link from the one that was not chosen. So let me explain which cards I matched, that this could be the parent. The first card is this old card that is a quote from Father James Shaw, and it's words. We know that words lead us to things, to realities far too glorious ever to be completely captured by words alone. And I thought, wow, I've always loved that quote. And I did have keywords picked out Words lead to glorious realities. And I had that as my tagline in the index, but I never had anything that I had added to it. But the reason why this card was such a strong candidate for being the parent to my new card is the question that arose in my mind. Can speed reading lead us to realities far too glorious to be captured by words alone? Can you get the sense of anything glorious when you're speed reading? I don't know yet because I haven't learned how to do it. But I did add it to the card, a little bit belated. And then I added an additional tagline to the card now that I've got 2 thoughts to be remembered, to be able to remember the whole card. So my new tagline was words lead to glorious realities. Speed read 2. So I'm going to have to, I've got words lead to glorious realities. That's where it used to cut off. And now I'm going to be adding speed read 2. So I did not choose to make this the parent card because I had another one that was actually better. So I now want to show you what I did because I want to retain the fact that this was a good candidate parent. If I did not have that other card that turned out to be even better, this would have been the parent. So now this is where a directory card comes in. And you probably know, if you've been watching me at all, that whenever a card has 2 or more child cards coming off from it, I make a directory card so that both child thoughts can be right with the main thought. Well, in this case, they're never going to be physically close together because it links to another drawer in my Zettelkasten, but I want the concepts to be together. And because there's only one opportunity to capture this link, I've got it on the directory card, even though it's the only card that's listed. So now these ideas are linked in my Zettelkasten, and this card is going to link off into another drawer to this card over here. So this was a review of how you can use a directory card to link to a card in a different location. So next is what card actually got to be chosen as the parent. And this is a quote from Ken Caputo, and he's quoting Bob Caffrey, and he's the one, Ken Caputo's the one who told me about this quote. And the quote is, "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast." And so my feedback on it was that how often when I rush, I actually slow myself down through stumbles and errors. So the reason why I ended up choosing this card is a little bit emotional. You see, I'm wondering if my reading is too slow to ever be able to use a speed reading technique that's fast. So the method that I'm thinking that I might have to try to see if I can get this to work with my slow brain, it would be to see if I can use the methods of slow reading and begin by using the methods slowly so that I can use the method smoothly and then gradually speed up. So that's why this card chose this card as its parent. Now, a word about numbering. Because I use the effortless numbering system, I knew that all I needed to do was add an A. This card's number, add an A to it, and I've got the child card. This card had no other child cards, so A was available. But look at this numbering system. It's a little bit unusual for what you usually see out of my Zettelkasten, but I've experimented with many different numbering systems, and I do not believe in renumbering cards. This from the person who actually did renumber her entire Zettelkasten once. Don't do it. It's really, really not worth it. I've got the aching hands to prove it. So this was a numbering system that used a category, and this category was 1,000 for me was insights, and I think 200 was quotes. I'm not sure, but the 1216 bottom line meant quotes on the pace of life, and I wouldn't do that this way. Currently, this was an experimental numbering system, and for me, part of the problem was I don't see why a quote on the pace of life needs to go hide off in a category of quotes. I think a main card about the pace of life ought to be able to reside with other main cards about the pace of life, whether or not they're quotes. So I think it was a mistake to have created this isolating category and sticking it over here. But it is the parent card, so I'm using it. And I'll show you something that's really interesting about categories. And this next statement is the reason why I decided to make this the subject of my video tonight. You notice this section I just told you was about quotes on the pace of life. Is this card a quote on the pace of life? No, it isn't. But it is the child of this card that is. So it's a beautiful case of the situation where you can make your categories as sweet as you like, but as soon as a card wants that card for his parent, and that card doesn't fit the categories, you just busted your category. And that's just fine. That's just fine. So now what's probably going to happen is anything else that comes along that's about pacing is going to want to join this conversation. And guess what? It may not be a quote either. And pretty soon anything about the pacing of life, whether it's a quote or not a quote, is going to end up growing up in this area. And that's just fine. So I hope you enjoyed this video about placing a main card. Remember, the child card always gets to choose which card it wants as the parent, and it is not obligated to tell you why it made that choice. It gets to make the choice that it wants. So the main card that I was adding was about speed reading, and somehow it got attached to a quote that related to the martial arts. And why? Because the child card wanted to be there, because it was pacing the reading and pacing the movement in martial arts, where you go slow and you practice it until you get it just right, and then you can go really fast. Well, is that going to apply to speed reading? I don't know, but they sure felt like they were on the same topic, and I believe that's why this card chose this one for its parent. But this card was not obligated to tell me why it wanted this card. And the reason why I think that's really important is a lot of people worry, and I've answered some of your emails and some of your comments, worry about, what are the rules? What are the rules for choosing a parent? Well, guess what? The rule is that the new card wants to be next to that card. Sorry, that's the other side of the brain. If you're going to have a brain in a box, it's going to have a left brain and a right brain, and you can't stop it from having both sides of its brain. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.